Thank you very much for having me.
Don't thank me yet.
I have the right to remain silent.
Is it finished?
Yeah, I just saw your text card.
Because it's in a TV. Do you have a single fact to back that up?
This is the one where
Think you're funny?
You understand me?
I think you need to go get a dictionary.
What?
what? So we watched Malignant, y'all.
Finally, for
At
goodness
last.
sake.
Yeah, bit of a gap between podcasts, but we finally watched Malignant, as is appropriate for this month of Octoberness. And I knew I wanted to see it when I found out that it was a James Wan passion project.
Right.
When I found out that a studio just gave him a boatload of money basically as like a reward for doing good with a DC movie.
Yeah.
Good job, James Wan. Here's some money. We trust you to come up with something.
Yeah.
Like he's done before. That's like actually how he got started with the Saw movies. That started out as just like a short film, the first Saw movie. I think it was like a 10 or a 15-minute short film. And I don't know, the right eyes saw it, and then he got a budget to make like a feature of Saw, and that was like crazy successful. And then one thing led to another. Then he was directing fucking Aquaman, I think it was, and then
We'll bypass that movie.
So Aquaman was a success for James Wan, and then Warner Brothers was like, well, good job. You passed the test. Do something of your own. And he comes up with this Malignant movie, which is just funny because it's the kind of movie where you're like, what kind of studio would look at this script and
be okay with it
and green light this?
Right.
But they told him he could do whatever he wanted. And I think he just told them, okay. And
that's fine.
Then you have Malignant.
Right.
So
first impressions, go ahead.
First impressions, well, like I mentioned last night while we were watching it, something I really loved about it is that it was unpredictable.
Right.
It wasn't like a play by numbers. There was like familiar things that would look like they were being set up, but then would turn into something else or throw you a curveball.
Right.
So it kept me guessing the entire time until like the final act where everything was just kind of thrown at the wall.
Oh my
and it
God,
almost did like a genre switch.
Yep. 100. Yep.
And in saying that, the whole movie, I guess I would classify it as like a horror comedy / tragedy.
What, a comedy? Can you explain that slightly? Because I would not enter into the comedy realm.
Because just in the absurdity.
Okay.
Because it's just, but it's handled so well. And there's just like a few like offbeat moments.
Right.
That make me go like,
it's like an odd tension relief.
Yeah, I guess kind of like these oddball moments.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I suppose you could call it like a thriller, but more than anything, I'd call it a horror.
Yeah,
of course.
I would say it was like a almost like a loose horror.
Because it's not a supernatural horror, and that's what they were trying to market it as. Well, like, here's James Wan, director of The Conjuring. Let's make a trailer. Let's flash some fucking strobes and have people's faces going, ah!
Right.
And we'll make it look like a spooky ghost in the closet movie.
Right.
But no, it's not a supernatural horror movie. What would you call it?
Oh, yeah? So I guess like my first reaction to it would be, obviously it's a horror. I don't know where to like put it in the genre realm. Obviously, like horror thriller. I don't think I'd touch comedy that much, but
it could have been funnier, and I thought it would have been funnier actually, which I'll touch on in a second.
But like it definitely had the moments of like relief that was very, in no way like a negative, but it was a little odd in a sense, where it was like because I went to the bathroom like mid movie and I was like, just keep it playing. I go to the bathroom and like 2 seconds later you pause it and you're like, something's about to happen. And I was like, I was gone for like 15 seconds. Like he's going to keep his like finger on the pulse, and that's what the movie felt like. But then you would have these like actual moments where it was just like really, it did border on like that comedy aspect, but it was like such a weird, thing.
Well, some people called it a comedy that were telling me about it, like that it had doses of comedy in it. And I thought that was going to be in slapstick fashion.
Okay.
But, and then like once it got going with the, we'll probably end up talking about spoilers in a latter section of the podcast, but at least getting started here, like when shit starts going down, I don't know really how to say this without being a spoiler. So fuck it. Here's the spoiler.
Just rock it. Just attention if you have not seen the movie.
Yeah, like starting at this time code, it begins spoiler.
At 6 minutes and
we'll
30
probably
seconds,
forget to say end spoiler time code, and just that'll be the whole rest of the podcast. But so she has a Siamese twin that was a part of her.
Well, it's not a Siamese twin, but
yeah, it is conjoined twin.
That's not what it's a. It's not a Siamese twin. A Siamese twin would be like actual twin. It's what they called it, a parasitic like embryo.
Isn't a Siamese twin though if they're attached?
Yeah, but this isn't the same thing. It's different in a sense. That's like more semantics, I guess. But
okay, well, in any case, Siamese twin, parasite, whatever. It was growing off of her, but sharing.
Stupid explanation. Like embryos, like when they're forming, normally are like together, and then they separate, and like one ends up, and I believe like survives. But like basically, what happened is the embryos stay together, so one of them gets a lot less like nutrients and whatnot to grow.
Yeah.
So this is like the wildest extreme version of that, where like she was born with this parasitic like embryo still connected like horribly.
Right.
So that's why it's a little different, but like I probably butchered that explanation too.
Well, when it came out the back of her skull.
Spoiler.
And then she's running around backwards with like broken arms and broken legs.
Grotesque.
Which the originality was just what a payoff in originality points. Yeah. But anyway, where I thought the comedy was going to come into it more was I thought she was going to be like awake while it was like running around, like killing people out. And she's just stuck there,
right?
Like basically on the back of its head now, just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And all these acrobatics. It's like this thing must have done nothing but like train how to do flips and cartwheels and
while she's sleeping and it takes over.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, we're going to do 14 backwards push-ups.
Yeah. So I thought like more of when people said comedy, I thought, okay, well, this is where we're going to start seeing some silliness.
Yeah. Which when you say that, I can see how it was taken a certain way. I can definitely understand that.
Like in the holding cell with all the women.
Right.
All the women that are in there that were like arrested that night, just their reactions to seeing this parasitic head crawl out of the back of another woman's head and go like,
right.
And just watching them go like, oh my, what the fuck?
Yeah.
It's just like nowhere they can go.
Right.
That was pretty hilarious.
Oh my God. Yeah. That was just, that was probably one of the more over the top scenes.
Right. And there were very noticeable scenes or segments or whatever, where like, I definitely could see where a studio would have said, we don't need this part. We can remove it.
Oh, 100%.
Because it just doesn't belong in a movie like this.
Right.
For example, when, what do we even call, or Gabriel?
Yeah. That's its name.
Yeah, that's what the parasite's name is. when it's like flying down the fucking fire escape and
Oh,
the
yeah,
cop
yeah.
chases after him, and now we have like a callback to the Point Break on foot chase scene
Right.
almost. And that chase goes on for like 5 or 10 minutes.
It really does, yeah.
And did you really need it in there? No, it
No, but it
still
was-
would have,
Yeah.
because the plot kind of holds still at that point. Like he's chasing something, and he can
Right.
see like, holy shit, this thing is like really fast and acrobatic, and I'm trying to catch it, but nothing really unfolds in that chase. There isn't
Right.
some plot point revealed in the midst of the chase. It's just like a fucking 10-minute chase scene.
It was just a fun.
That was just fun.
Yeah.
Just running all
Yeah.
over the city, and him chasing this thing into the most absurd places that I would never go. If I saw that thing in the first place, like, and it starts dropping down the fire escape, I don't even know that I would bother to go look at it as it ran down the
Right.
street. I'd probably just be so fucking terrified to be already out the back door.
You wouldn't chase it? You wouldn't do the typical
Fuck
chase?
no.
in
Not
a
after
horror movie?
not after seeing it do all that shit. I don't know what that dude saw like right before it went running. I can't remember.
He was in the bathroom, remember? He like went into that, like the last guy's apartment, and he was like,
oh, he was in the tub.
he was like, Dr. blah, blah, blah. And then he like walks in the bathroom, he's dead in the tub, and then she's like there screaming like, he's still here.
Yeah.
Like it was that little fight, and then it like went out the window.
Yeah.
Or like out the hallway and ran out to like the nearest escape ladder or whatever you call those.
But this is just such an interesting like villain, like in the same vein as like or I'm not saying this is the same vein as these characters, but like if you take like Jason or Michael Myers or something that's just stalking you with a knife, they always seem to be like walking in the shadows and or seeing little glimpses of them. But this, we just get full wide angles of acrobatic cartwheel Jackie Chan parasitic action. Just fucking cartwheeling over a desk to kick somebody in the face and then throw a fucking pair of scissors on the desk through someone else's eye.
So
jumping through the ceiling and the floor, and
that kind of segues me into my only kind of like part of this entire movie is, now I'm not going to pick on it like too much because I do really enjoyed this movie a lot, but the only disconnect that I started to have during the movie was those scenes where, especially like when they were down, spoilers, underneath the city, like it was like old Seattle or whatever.
Yeah.
And then Gabriel like jumped from the ground to like the thing and like scurried up that little hole.
Yeah.
Like that was obviously CG.
When the cop was chasing him. Yeah.
That was like CG. And there was like a couple moments where it was super evident it was CG, and then it would go back. And this is just me nitpicking, just being stupid about it. Like I said, it's really like the only gripe of the entire movie is obviously there were some scenes where it was an actor or like a stuntman, doing it.
Very interesting resume.
Yeah. And you could tell the body parts were made to look like they were still backwards, but it was obviously not.
Mm-hmm.
So the movement was completely different than like the CG movement, which the CG movement, you could go, to 1,000 on walking backwards because it's a 3D object. But that's my only gripe about the entire movie, like just that small little thing. But like, I just think that whole, like the dual character is just honestly, it's one of those things where it's like you were given kind of all the clues until the scene in the jail. And I honestly didn't really put it together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Until she like starts screaming and I'm like, like how is like Gabriel physically gonna, like, when are we gonna see these two on screen together? Like, how does that work?
Yeah.
And I'm just like thinking in my head the whole time, and then she starts like moving her hands back to like, and I was like, oh my God. And then it was just like boom, 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 boom. Like, oh, like she hit her head on the wall. Like, this is probably looking into it too much because like her sister then's like, oh my God, The wall reactivated her, her parasite brother.
Woke her up.
But like,
or woke him up.
Yeah, and then it was interesting, and this is why I think I could probably like go back and watch this pretty immediately again, because then you think about like all of the like dreams she had, and she was always waking up with blood on like a pillow or something. Yeah. And that's literally just like her head being open and then closing back up.
Yeah.
And like, that her mind, like his or her mind, like then, faking a thing for her. And I was just like, man, it was so freaking unique in that way.
I think my favorite moment of the entire movie was when they were watching the home video footage of her being interviewed on like the autopsy table, and then the home video camera
goes around,
walks around her, and then you see the fucking brother, twin,
like a third of her body, basically.
Yeah, just hanging on the back of her with the little fucking arms and everything, arms, and it's like
right,
like it couldn't just be there, like talking normal and like hey, this is real shitty situation, or I don't know like what it would be saying if I was fucking. If that was me, if I was Gabriel, I mean, yeah, it sucks. You're not going to have...
You're on the back of her like...
Yeah, like, I don't know that you're going to be...
doctors.
You're going to make the basketball team in high school, or might be hard to make friends. Or maybe you'll have a ton of friends. You'll probably be in a world record book or whatever. I don't know. I just think it's funny how, like, Gabriel just couldn't be...
Normal?
Just no, I don't want to say normal because that's so not normal to be in that situation. But I just like how the entire time in the footage he's just like, ah! Ah! like, and nothing else.
Right.
Like he's just being evil because because he looks hideous too. Well, but what if he was like really nice and sweet and everything? Like, can you please just like find a way to save my life?
Well, I would. Well,
they could have made him more sympathetic, which they did a little bit.
Well, I think that's the issue, though. I think the issue is, and I think there are like studies on this type of stuff with like, people that are born with like, a bulge or something, and then like, they take bones out from some other body because that's literally what that would be. Yeah, it would be a parasitic or like a malignant, like extra part of the embryo that was attached. And I think the idea behind this is that obviously two people sharing one brain is like a pretty hard thing. And there are like Siamese twins that like share the same basic like mental structure that have no like vicious, obviously they seem like nice people. But I guess the theory is that this thing was just like so parasitic in nature that it like had enough like cognitive like ability to be like, I need to survive no matter what.
Right.
And what that translates into is basically him killing the 3 babies she miscarried and killing people or basically poisoning her mind in a way that he could manipulate how he wanted, in a sense.
Yeah. Well, so he was killing people right from the get-go, like before they even did the operation to separate them. He killed that room full of people, didn't he? Someone like walked into the room.
Because what you see is like you see that vague outline of like behind the curtain, and then what they're dragging out is like what seems like a small child with like very evident kid socks on. You see like this much, and it's just like a leg being dragged out. So you assume that that's what is happening, and then that's like the reason they take the risk at operating and cutting him off of her.
Yeah.
So
they like cut him off, but they then press down inside of her the rest of him.
It's such a ridiculously graphic thing, and I just, that was one of those scenes where I was just kind of like, all right, like whatever, I'll let it pass, because it was like literally like they do all this surgery And obviously she never like mentions how like literally half of her back was this other being.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's some disconnect there. But then the one scene, they literally just have her skull like open like this, and they're just shoving like what you assume to be like the remainder of what would be like connected brain into her skull.
Right.
And then just like putting a perfect skull cap back on, and so everything's sewn up, and everything's fine.
And then it wakes up as a super ninja.
Right. And that was the one of the very few times, like maybe 5 different times I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Like those are the scenes to me where it's like, if you're sitting down in a room, like a board of directors for, a studio or something, or you're making your pitch and they're like, all right, so how do they get separated? And like you explain that scene, they're all just like,
yeah.
And like slowly throwing the script into the trash.
Yeah.
Like but in a sense, that's what makes this movie, I think, fucking cool, is because he was allowed to do what he wanted. So we got that scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like not like a double, a double-edged sword. That's like the wrong terminology, but like obviously it has its quirkiness and kind of goofiness in that, but it was freaking awesome that we could see it.
It's an unusual mixture, the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
It's even like an action movie.
Oh, very much so.
Like it turned into almost like but we can do it better than John Wick for a moment.
Yeah, they tried.
Yeah.
So it was very odd.
It's like everyone needs like a symphony of violence scene now.
Right.
But anyway.
But I don't hold much against it, honestly.
No, I really can't, because it was just like a fun passion project with twists and turns and something that didn't feel formulaic.
Right.
And I can't really think of another movie to compare it to. If I tried, I'd probably end up comparing it to multiple movies, because it encapsulates like multiple genres
right
at times. But yeah, I'm not sure what else to really say about it off the top of my head.
Review ever.
Yeah. Well, how long was it? It was like an hour and 40 minutes or
40 something, because the whole thing was like an hour 50.
Yeah.
So a good 10-minute credits probably.
Yeah. I don't even know. Was there any actors in it that like either one of us recognized? Well, you recognized the main actress.
The main actress, I knew that I had seen her in something.
Yeah.
Which ended up being Peaky Blinders, but
right. Well, I guess
other than that,
could jump to our rating boxes.
Is this it? We're gonna go 30 minutes in and be over. So yeah. Well, do you want to talk about, before we actually rate it, do you want to talk about any like style choices that you enjoyed, or like the different? Well, here's something I did want to bring up. Did you not think, like, let's cut the movie into thirds, maybe, right? Did you not think the first third of the movie was like so traditional horror that it was like, and then
that's kind of what I meant.
It like hopped to like almost like the last 2/3 was kind of like it's almost its own thing.
Yeah.
But it even felt those between like the 2/3 and like the last third, like those felt separated in a way where it was like full on horror, like camera movements, jump scares, just the way they like cinematography, everything. And then like 2/3 in, you get like this odd switch where it's like coming out of that more towards like traditional thriller, where you're seeing some more things and whatnot. And then that last third is like full on, almost like action sequence.
Yeah. It goes from like traditional horror setup with some spooky thing in the dark, knifing people,
right,
and murders happening. And then the second part is like the whodunit detective, pin the murder on this woman.
Right.
You don't have any explanation for this. So it's kind of like a prove my innocence, prove what's really going on, detective investigative thing.
Yeah.
And then the last part of it's just like balls to the wall action, absurdity.
What do you think about that? Like, did you enjoy that switch up?
Yeah, it didn't like take me out of the movie or anything. And like, of course, movies have done that before, and some do it really well, and others not so much. But I thought this one handled everything really well, and everything flowed and sort of it was compartmentalized nicely,
Right.
And it kind of like faded out of one mode and into another, or like whatever I'm trying to say. It did it in such a way that I felt it was good, and it didn't take
Like
me
you
out
were
of it.
comfortable with it.
It wasn't like throughout the whole movie it was wish-wash back and forth,
Right.
didn't know what it wanted to be. It was very intentional.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I think it ended up working.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of like realizing that through the movie, where it was kind of like, okay, this is what's happening, and we're almost like genre switching. It was to me, it was one of those things that it was a little like confusing at first, but like the movie's ability to make sure you didn't know what was coming, and like that being intertwined with like just that kind of genre switching, I think was like that's like bordering genius. Like
and
on
the psychological end too, with her, and not knowing like what's really going on, which is a trope in a lot of cases, like oh, it's happening in my head, kind of thing. But at least it was done well.
Yeah, that was, I think, one of my biggest concerns was obviously like, you know, towards like the midway point, is it going to be one of these stupid things where like we get like a scene of her like snapping, and then, you know, she goes and puts on the jacket and it's just her. It's just been her. And we did get that in the jail. But then it was like that you didn't see it coming part, where it was like, oh, okay, this is when the big reveal comes and it's just her. Yeah. And then she opens her skull up and it's not really just her. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Like this was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole unveiling of here's what's really going on.
Right.
And then as soon as you know, it's like, okay, now we're set up. Now let's roll with this.
Right.
And it just like sends you hurling into another fucking
the only
chapter of the movie.
The only thing I think, this is like one of my minor pickings too, is the only thing I was a little kind of like, it's convenient, is like the odd superhuman strength that he gained by switching to Gabriel was like a little like, all right.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, it is what it is, but it's not like I can justify there being another way, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, what I think would really happen if this were to actually take place,
they would be dead.
Yeah, the woman would just end up like tripping and falling over.
Right.
And just flopping around on the floor and not able to get up.
Right.
But yeah, I guess this Gabriel, because like maybe he thinks like, oh, this is my body, but it's also like I can treat it like a shield and bang it up and bruise it up or whatever. And maybe he's not even the one that feels the pain inflicted, so he can just like take all the risks and all the jumps, and it's not even really of consequence to him.
Right.
I don't know. There's all kinds of like fucking rules that can just be made up.
Yeah.
For something like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have much of a movie, or you'd have a very. You could do so many things with this sort of plot, or this sort of premise of like a conjoined twin, or
right,
or whatever. But this was an interesting way to go about it. It's like, let's get the most out of a synopsis like this, where I don't know. I just think it was all really well done, really well handled, really original, really unpredictable, fun, over the top, ridiculous, a little convenient in some spots, but
if you
not to like the detriment.
If you could pick like one thing you would change, what would it be? Because I know what my one. This is such like a stupid thing for me, but it was just one line in the movie, and it wasn't the "oh my god" one either.
I suppose that what I would have liked to see was a little bit more like injection of comedy in the dialogue, like not in that stupid way,
Okay.
not in that like conformative comedy way of today, where because I don't think movies today are that funny, but
Right.
I think if it like played on the absurdity of it more and people's reactions just of like what the hell is actually going on.
Right.
And because it's so absurd already, I think the dialogue and reactions to things could have been a bit more absurd. And I wish there was more like slapstick element in it. Like I was saying with I wish she was still awake while it was running around taking control of her. Or maybe they like fought back and forth over the brain
Right.
more.
Right.
I think they could have expanded on some of those aspects a bit more.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, like if I was in charge of like coming up with these insertions, I can't off the top of my head say what they would be or where I would put them, but
Right.
It kind of left me feeling like there would have been a little bit more of that absurdity and comedy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like a dark comedy element injected
Right.
in a little bit more.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What was yours?
What the one thing I would change probably?
Yeah.
Honestly, it was the really stupid line at the end where her sister is underneath the gigantic, ridiculously heavy hospital bed, and she walks over and she's like, "Madison, is it you?" And she's like, "Yeah, it's me." He's like, "Don't even try, it's too heavy." And she basically was like, "It's my body. If he can do it, so can I." And then she lifts an entire hospital bed up and like shifts it off to the side. When now, like I said, this is just me nitpicking, so it's not like it is what it, that's what they chose, so it's no big deal. But like the entire movie was her basically like as I don't know, she was portrayed as like this weak, innocent woman that just like life has been real shitty for her. And then like right at the end, it's like her moment to like take it back. So I get it. It was just like one of those one-liners that, or those like set of like lines that was
probably
just
looked
like,
good on the page, but I think that's one of those moments where they could have just had something funny happen instead. Like her just go, "Fuck it, I can't do this." Just drop it, and her sister's like, "Ow!" I don't know.
And that's it. The movie's over
much.
then.
Ends up just killing her sister.
Jeez.
Yeah, the whole thing at the end with like her sister, when we thought her sister got shot in the head by Gabriel, like I thought that really happened. I'm sure everybody did. And then all of a sudden that was her being like, "Oh no, I just made you think you did that."
Right. That was her taking back over, I guess.
Yeah, which I mean, okay. And then like closing him in a cell. Like, where did this come from? Did she just all of a sudden realize, like, hey, if I concentrate really hard and think of him being in a cage, then he won't be able to do what he's doing anymore?
Right. That's why I said that was one of my other nitpicks, was just that scene. That scene was so freaking odd to me in like the jail cell, where it was like such a visual representation of her locking him up that it was like,
where did that come
it was
from?
almost just like too far.
You
know what I mean?
Yeah, that part I was like, where did that come from, and why is she able to do that so easily and conveniently all of a sudden? This wasn't like a book of spells she read or something.
Right.
She was just all of a sudden, oh, I have the ability to put him back in there.
Right.
I think it would have been better if like that fucking head that came out the back of her head had its own piece of brain now or something, and they would have just fucking cut him off, and then he'd have been like this fucking like really weird thing just like rolling around.
Like that's what was running around this whole time.
Yeah. But something I thought that was like interesting was when the the mom at the end was like, I should have never abandoned you or whatever. It actually made you sympathetic for Gabriel for a second. And then he unloads a cap into the sister's head, which, even though it didn't actually happen, it was like, oh, well, now he's
chosen,
just lost his redemption.
Yeah, he's chosen his side.
Because we need to have him as bad because we have to end this somehow where, the baddie gets his comeuppance. So we have to make it like, yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
If they had to kill him, but at the same time they were doing it, it's just because he was like unloved. And like, who wouldn't be? Like, you're born and you're attached to someone else, and it's just like, oh well, we're gonna have to kill you because by you being alive, you're taking from this other person that has a chance to actually live. So yeah, it's a pretty bad deal of the cards if you're Gabriel.
Yeah,
but he was just right away. That's what I mean. Like in the operating room or whatever,
he was just
already like rah, and ready to attack and kill people. It's because it's like, okay, if you're gonna act like that, then that just further solidifies what we have to do. If you could just like be cool, maybe we could figure something out.
Well, see, that's why like the first part of the movie intrigues me so much, because when her husband gets killed, it's like the first time we're introduced to like this thing, right?
Yeah.
And it has what appears to be like a physical form in a sense, but also doesn't really. And that's why it feels so different, because like the first part of the movie takes that like supernatural approach almost.
Yeah.
Of like what this thing is.
Like a misdirection.
Right. Which I didn't mind at all, but like there's just this weird thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
I lost my train of thought right there, but that's why I think
it did look like a CGI ooze monster in the shadows.
But like there were moments where like you could see like limbs and stuff, and it was obviously really creepy.
Yeah.
But it was just such a disconnect from like then the final form.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like I said,
when it comes to like, oh, this person's got shit going on in their brain. Once you throw the fucking brain, and the things the brain is capable, air quotes, of, well, then there's just like no limit to like, oh, we can subvert it this way or do this trick or this dream or this fucking mind trick or this person's imagining this or that. I mean, you get away with literally anything.
Oh, definitely.
Once you throw that fucking like brain psyche stuff in the mix.
Yeah, absolutely. And they did that pretty well too, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought just about everything that it did really well.
Yeah. That's why I said I really can't knock it too much.
Yeah.
But, obviously we're going to have,
It's hard to give it like a lot of like labels or to sum it up in like just a few words, because you really can't do that so easily.
Right.
You
want to, since you keep looking over this way, away from the cameras, do you want to
look at the chart?
Yeah, you want to look at the chart?
Yeah.
The whole podcast, you're like facing away from the camera.
The entire hour, my head's just looking. When is the chart coming up?
All right, people. So we've moved the chart from the wall to a digital version of it, which is much nicer. So we have sound and music.
Is that your name first? Oh, you go first. I know.
Yes, it is my
I'm going to take a guess of what your score is going to be.
And your guess is what?
Probably the same as mine. 9.
Yeah. 9. You're going with 9.
Yes. 9 on sound and music.
Rewatchability.
Do you want to talk about sound and music or circle back and get?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Okay. Whoa, slow down there, kid.
I thought you were going to go into like a 10-minute.
Well, I just got into like
over the sound design.
I just got into like a weird mode where I have to start talking.
Just grade this fucking paper and be done with it.
Go ahead and talk if you want to about sound, and then
Well,
I'll go
both the
ahead.
sound and the music I thought was very good. The sound design was exceedingly well done. Tender love and care put into that. There were some moments of sound where it's like like the couch cushion reinflating. There was like a fucking sound for that. Like those really, really, really quiet moments where all the other sound drops out and one isolated sound presents itself. Like that kept happening, and that was a very like wind the tension up even more.
Right.
So those moments were all throughout it. And yeah, it's like, even though like as you're watching a movie, it's not like every audience member that watches a movie is like, oh, this movie has really good sound. It's like you don't even really notice it. It just kind of like it's part of the experience that's there for you, and you don't even really know like why this movie is more enjoyable, but it packs more of a punch, more of an impact, like in these what would you call it? I don't fucking know, but whatever. The goddamn sound was fantastic.
Right.
The music was really fucking interesting because it was like 80s synth which I fucking love, but it was like, what the fuck ever, right? So synth is coming back.
I don't know if it ever left. It just moved a little 80s.
There's just this craving for like that 80s sound and vibe wave again.
This is where so
I dug the music very much.
Yeah, to piggyback off of what you were saying, it to me, obviously video is nothing without sound. So or you have, the soundless moving pictures of old, and they're effective, but like once you start putting sound to it, like your connection with that video or piece of video, the image on screen is like heightened extremely.
It immerses you more without you realizing it.
So like I would say the average movie with like it was good sound design, but no over the top, you shouldn't really notice anything. If you notice something, then it's either good or bad.
Yeah,
right.
Much. Like I noticed the couch cushion sound.
So in this movie,
I enjoyed it.
There were like very, very, very specific times where like an effect was made, where it was a sound effect or the music or whatever, where you noticed it in a hyper positive way. Just like my favorite part of probably like the whole sound design was just that like opening and closing of the door. Just that a bit, just the feeling it gave you of everything getting sucked in and like out and in. It was so well done.
Yeah.
And then the 80s music being like this almost like borderline comedy of itself, where it was just like this super ridiculous high stress moment, and then it's just like and it was like, wait, what? Like, wait, this is not the music.
The best part that it kicked in was right after her mom fell through the attic down into the living room, and the daughter's like, ah! And the music goes near as she's like looking at her mom on the floor,
right,
and it just like fades to like police cars,
right, and it's just like the ability to do that with nothing other than sound. That is when you're getting to like a level of like, I understand exactly how I want the emotion to be manipulated.
Yeah. And
that is like it. To get to a 10, I'm not sure what like you would have to do. I can tell you, like, for me, like a 10 would be like borderline Star Wars, but that has like a nostalgia factor to it. So it's not necessarily like Star Wars sound design is better. It's just, it has that like one added little thing.
Right.
But like this, this like pushes the.
Yeah, it's not a 10 because it's not like one of those. I don't think it's going to become like iconic for its music or something, like not like some of those timeless themes that like will always be fucking around.
Right.
Like if it was like that sort of impact, then that's like what gets 10s.
Right.
But this was just like fucking great. Like it doesn't have to be the next fucking score of the century. But it was just good. I mean,
it was
so
just
it's
really, really
good. Nice big fucking score for sound and music.
All right.
Um,
Well, after we talked about that, rewatchability. You go first.
rewatchability. Obviously, it's a lot of fun, especially to watch with multiple people, I would think.
Yeah.
Especially with somebody that like hasn't seen it yet and you're showing them, I
Right.
think would make it even more enjoyable by a large degree.
Yeah.
So rewatchability, I would say probably an 8.
Wow.
Ooh, my goodness.
And the reasoning that
Double eights.
for me, we'll probably be pretty close on all these scores, honestly. But for me, the reasoning for it being an 8 and not any higher is just the fact that this is definitely one of those movies that's not for everybody. So you're not going to go to like every friend group or every friend and be able to watch this, I think, in a way.
Right.
But and
if you keep talking, I'm just going to put her in the fence.
Oh yeah. Sorry, there's a dog in the house. But yeah, I just think that this is such a fun movie in a way that people that do like this like weird genre, almost subgenre of like horror thriller, borderline comical aspect of this like weird story. Yeah. I mean, it gets an 8, and an 8's pretty high, honestly, in my book, because in order to get like a 9 or 10, that would have to be something that you could never get tired of, which most movies you're going to get tired of to some extent. So we can go to story, and the story I will also give an 8, and I will explain my reasoning, and then we'll get to Matt. But the story is kind of along the same lines as rewatchability. An 8 for me is really high for the story. Like to get to a 9 or 10, you have to be like freaking damn near perfect on like every, execution of things in my head that I would like say, this is exactly how, like watching certain movies, you're just kind of like, oh my God, that's exactly how I wanted to go. Or like it needed to go.
Right.
So actually I'll do 8.5. I'll change it to an 8.5 because now that I'm talking about it, it's more of like, I don't know what I would have changed honestly to like adjust anything.
Yeah.
So that's where I would say at it.
Yeah. Well, I'll give it a decimal too, a 7.5, which is also a very respectable score.
Right.
Yeah, like you said, I don't really know what I would introduce to change it.
Right.
And that 7 comes from like the presentation,
right,
and the unpredictability of it, and the entertainment and fun,
right,
and guessing, and fuck the different nods to genres, or call it nods, or full embracement of genres was
right,
like done very well. And I think everything
was done. Yeah.
Lent
well
itself to in a nice way of telling the story, as interesting as it was.
Right.
Of course, there's stories out there that I like to watch way more.
Right.
As unique as this was, and as much fun as it was to get like these reveals and payoffs, and like, oh my God moments that this had throughout it. I would think like if I started pushing it into like, like a fucking mobster movie or something like Goodfellas or something, like that's a story that like I'm gonna love enough to give like a 9.5 or something.
Right.
This being like a horror movie, it's like they're not really known for their like
groundedness,
groundbreaking, sweeping stories that'll capture your imagination. And like horror movies just need a setup, like in a lot of cases, like a skeleton to hang the meat on.
Right.
So in ways of story, you really don't like feel like for a lot of horror movies, it's just kind of like by the numbers, standard setup, standard characters, standard fucking spooky wookie house. And although this did have a spooky wookie house, it wasn't like the house, the characters the whole time were like the house. Which I'm so sick of hearing about in horror movies.
And that's why and that's why I said that like the movie was broken up into like thirds, and it was done very well to like avoid that type of stuff.
Yeah, it was a cool setting for shit to go down. I don't know why you'd want to live in a house like that, but it wasn't like the fucking haunted house itself. Like we have good haunted house movies, sure, and more good ones could be made, sure, but I'm just glad it didn't. It wasn't another one of those because we've seen enough.
Right.
So yeah, very solid on the story.
So let's go to characters, and I'll let you answer that first.
Characters. Well, I liked the people in the movie, but nobody really stands out so much. Like I think everyone did a good job, decent job, but there's no one really memorable about it.
Right.
I would say like a 6.
As
they were serviceable.
If you were viewing, I already gave my answer before Matt was done talking.
Yeah, they were serviceable. Like it could have been one of those things that really dragged everything else down. Like if the acting was bad, but no, the acting was good, and but nobody was really fucking memorable. I remember the fucking male cop because he's good at chasing. I remember his partner because she had a lollipop.
Right.
I remember her because she was decent and had this thing growing out. I mean, she carries the whole movie and carries Gabriel on the back of her
physically
head. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there wasn't really many people in it, right?
Well, no, not really.
And there wasn't like that fucking what do you call it? Oh god damn it.
Just back off a little.
Like that character that like has a history with the monster. Yeah. Like the guy in in Halloween. What's the doctor's name? Dr. Loomis. That's like he knew Michael Myers when he was a boy, and he was there and saw this horrible stuff.
Right.
And he's trying to be like he's the one telling everybody about the evil of Michael Myers and what I've seen and the blackness of his eyes. There was no like fucking
blackness.
Old salty-haired character that was talking from experience of like, oh, that day in the lab. Well, you had like the fucking people, like the 3 people it killed that you saw glimpses of.
Right.
But they weren't like a presence throughout like you see so often in movies that would have a setup like that. I think it actually could have maybe used that in some way, maybe.
Do you think that's not just a callback of almost like nostalgia? Keep it up.
I don't know. Going down. I kind of felt like a character was missing from this movie.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that a little bit. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. And I'll kind of explain why a little bit is because they played, this would be my guess at it. They played so much on the relationship between Madison or Emily and Gabriel without ever talking about it.
Yeah.
That it felt like there was no other character. Yeah. Or like that empty, because at first it was like, oh, it's going to be her husband. He gets literally killed within 10 minutes. Then it's like, oh, it's going to be her sister. Well, her sister's like in and out of the movie until the 3rd quarter.
Yeah.
Or the last third. That was the stupidest math ever. The last third of the movie was finally the moment where she's like present almost constantly.
Right.
Yeah. And then it almost felt like they were trying to wedge her adopted mother into it. But also she was like in and out. And then at the end, like the very end of the movie, they like forced her real mother into it by like saying like, Gabriel, I never should have like abandoned you and whatever. It just felt like they were making up for like that other character not being there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I completely get that.
Yeah. Yeah, because the characters, you had the mother, the sister, the detectives, the main character, Gabriel, on the back of her and in her head.
Right.
And that's really like everybody, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Other than like the passing characters.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, everybody was kind of like serviceable.
Yeah.
I suppose.
And I gave it a 5 basically for what you're saying. It's middle of the road. It is nothing stood out. It was almost comically character like written, like, you know, the cop with the lollipop, or, you know, just kind of like that staple cop that is going to run down a bad guy.
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah.
In my book, it's not good or bad. It's just, it's middle of the road.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I wish there could have been maybe more fleshed out with the detective or something. Like, you see like his day-to-day of what his job is actually like, but now this is what he's dealing with.
Right.
But yeah, that feeds then into like, you could really play that for laughs in a lot of way, or flesh him out a little bit more. I don't know. I feel like time could have been taken away from certain characters, or certain characters could have been like completely removed, and we could have given more time to
someone else,
or flesh them out more, give them something else to do, another aspect.
Right.
Again, that's something like if someone just put me in charge all of a sudden and I was back in time at the drawing board, like, I don't know what I would do, but it just feels like this is an ingredient that was
skimmed through,
needed to be a little bit more considered, fleshed out, worked out.
Sure.
The way that everything turned out is fine.
Yeah.
So whatever.
Yeah. It's not that it was bad.
Yeah.
It was just, it felt a little empty.
It didn't hit any home runs in the character department. That's all. Except for Gabriel himself. It's just like a
demon.
Yeah.
What did you call him when you were little? The devil.
How original.
Do you remember? Oh, God, I hit. That was another one-liner that was just kind of like, gosh.
Yeah, the devil doesn't scare anybody anymore.
All right. So go ahead with, do you believe the universe, basically, or the movie universe that it built?
Well, that's where you really have to take a leap. This is where you have to suspend your disbelief completely, as in this, since this is already just like an absurd, ridiculous popcorn munch of a movie. We might as well have had even more just ridiculous shit injected into it.
A popcorn munch of a movie. Oh my God, I love it.
So
what would you give it?
Well, obviously, because there's different angles to look at this from. This shit would never happen this way,
right?
In the real world. However, when a movie like sets its parameters up and like establishes its rules or whatever, and then does it stay inside those rules, or does it reach outside of them?
Right.
It's kind of a tough nut to crack. I'll just give it a 5.
Okay.
Because it's so fucking like,
I would say I'm gonna opposite you here. Just because, so my defense on giving it a slightly above par is just that, like, in this universe of doctors who don't know how to do things, or doctors that take home case files after they've retired, which I don't think is a thing, and keep them in encyclopedia-sized books and stuff. Right. So in this world that we've built here in Malignant, I believe it to a certain extent. The issue, I think, or the disconnect that I have with it is that it is grounded in reality, in like almost, I don't know what year it would be in that movie, but like it's grounded in present reality. So that's where I can't give it any higher than a 6, because we're talking about real life, basically.
It helps.
Give yourself a little space on the mic.
It helps, like, I think these aspects where we're supposed to suspend our disbelief, I think it helps more when they then don't establish where the setting actually is.
Right.
City locations, town locations. They don't mention states or anything. That creates like its own removed,
just
sort of
unnamed place.
Unnamed, where like whatever this world is, whatever this place is, it's unknown to you, but you're invited here to witness it
Right.
and see it. And these are the rules. So that I think goes miles into like
that actually makes
suspending
a lot of sense.
the disbelief aspect of it. So yeah, that's
because it was so well grounded in this is Seattle.
Yeah.
Because excuse me, good Lord. There was like at least one shot with like the Seattle needle or whatever the thing is, like that famous Seattle tower thing.
Yeah.
And then that might have even been shown more than once. And then like there you get like a whole like 2-minute scene about this like tour group under Seattle. And it's like it's so grounded in the fact that this is right now and is happening like right now, present day, that it's like it's hard to like disconnect that and then say, oh, but I'm in movie land right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty understandable, honestly.
And like this city is like supposedly this thing's hunting ground, right? Well, and how long is it? This thing is like what, 30, 35 years old?
Well, it's however old she is. And it only just came back into consciousness because her husband beat her head against the wall.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's not like it's been around forever.
Yeah, it's not like waking up every night or anything.
Right. But it has had an awkward amount of time to like set up shop in the attic.
And get really good at ninja skills.
Yeah. And have like a grinder up there that no one hears.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
little placements like that.
Whatever.
Yeah. When you start thinking about
if I keep
like,
talking about it, I'll probably drop it to a 5. So let's stop talking.
Yeah.
Okay.
A nice fair score.
Creativity.
Well, this will be a higher number.
I know where I'm going with it. You, sir?
Yeah, let's do an 8.
You also 8?
Yeah.
Go ahead and talk about it.
Okay. The whole premise of a parasitic brother. Just that thing like being on the back of her head alone. And then the whole idea of, oh, we have to kill it. Otherwise, it's going to be bad for your health. And then him like, without her knowing, the reason she could never have a pregnancy come to term is because he kept like liquefying or feeding off of the fetus as it developed or whatever.
Grotesque.
It's the first thing I talk about when getting into the creativity, but not just off of like the premise, but the whole way of making the movie, the camera work. The style of it.
If you have a 0.5, doesn't that round up?
It would be a 5.
Never mind. Forget that I asked. Oh wait, shoot. If your score is 7.25, do you want it to be a 7.3 or a 7.2?
Whatever the numbers say that it is. How is yours a 0.4? I would think if you had a decimal of a 0.5 and just one of them, then they would just be a 0.5. But maybe not.
It's an average.
Okay. I don't know why it makes me think that. But anyway, yeah, it's very fucking creative. A lot of good camera work, good premise, unique premise. It's one of a kind, I suppose, in its own way. I don't know of another movie like this. I'm sure there's ones that have similar aspects to it.
Right.
Maybe something that came out like a Grindhouse movie.
Right.
It was on the gas station shelf for 5 minutes. Somebody somewhere. Yeah, I mean, there was opportunity to do creative things in this movie, and he did some creative things.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, sure, it was creative. What would you say?
Creativity? I mean, honestly, I think it was pretty freaking creative. I think it was one of the more creative movies I've watched in a while, honestly. Just because it's like, it's just at the point where there's so many movies out there that just repeat the same type of things over and over and over and over, that in my mind it gets a little tiring, because even if you see something vaguely different, it's going to have like, you know, something like a taste of the same thing. So in saying that, I feel like the creativity of this one was pushed, maybe not as far as it could go, obviously, but it was pushed like well into the enjoyable range.
Oh, for sure.
So that's kind of where I land on the that 8, because 9 and 10 would be reserved for people that have just went balls to the walls,
Yeah,
you know, and just like blown my mind with what they came up with.
A movie that would get a 10 in creativity would be like Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah.
So yeah, while this was still a creative movie, I mean, there was room for more. I don't know if there was room for more in this.
Well,
it just depends who's making it.
Both can say that there was room for a little bit more, at least, because some of the stuff was a little, you know, it was convenient, or you know, some one-liners that we've heard before.
Yeah, or there was like there was a very easy kill list with like the
doctors that hurt him.
Yeah, the surgery team that gives us like, okay, 3 people we can just like formulaically take out,
right?
To set up the whole like who done it, we're trying to figure this out segment of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest, maybe not flaws with the movie, but like the biggest kind of like roll your eyes is like the fact that he disappeared into her head for X amount of years, and then she gets hit in the head, and he comes back, and just this entire time he's been stewing unconsciously to kill again.
Yeah. Or what if he was just awake under there the whole time?
He's just like talking. But you know what I mean? So in that sense, it's just kind of like, you know, creativity wise, I can't give you any more.
I meant to say on Do You Believe It, when you got 12 cops all shooting at one thing.
That was Star Wars-esque with the stormtroopers.
It's like, I don't give a fuck how good you are at cartwheels. Like, you can't dodge that.
Well, Gabriel
and then get up close to each one of them and like fucking ninja them,
right?
And then move on to the next guy and just So,
but you know, we could pick on everything.
That's what it got. Yeah, maybe the fact that it all happened in like this big fucking wide open room,
right?
I mean, maybe if this was more of like hallways and tight spaces, and she was like taking them out, like, you know, one by one or something, but to just be in the fucking room with like 12 of them and it's like, okay, we're going to be John Wick now.
Right.
It was still fun. I still thought it was cool as shit, but it was just like, okay.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, that's why I think I can give it like a slight pass to a certain extent, just because the movie was sectioned in a way where it was like, well, this is what we're doing now. Hang on for the ride.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and then again, I was saying like it should be an absurd comedy, like if it wants to be, and I guess you could say that was one of the absurd moments. So yeah, it's like, why not?
Well, in saying all of that, we'll switch back for our total score of
drum roll
7.3 here.
I think that might actually be what it is on IMDb too.
I think that's one of our higher scores.
Yes.
Do you want me to look it up on here, or do you want to look it up on there?
I'm practically there.
Okay. As he's typing for the first time. But I think that's one of our higher scores. It was a super enjoyable movie. In no way, obviously, like normal, does any of our banter with disgruntledness, you know, the 7.3 means that we enjoyed it. I think this movie was strong all the way around. Obviously, it did fall a little short. Specifically, you can see the characters and like, do you believe the universe we're in? Obviously, we're a little lacking on in our opinions, but that's, you know, to each his own. And overall, the movie was freaking fun, honestly, just to enjoy.
Yeah, fun, enjoyable, unpredictable.
Right.
That's what I would say. Like, you'll have a good time with it, especially if you like horror movies.
Oh yeah,
or
definitely.
gory movies. I mean, you'll get that in there.
Yeah, but yeah, I think
But
that's
yeah, it's definitely not the fucking Conjuring or
Right.
Something like that.
Well, I think that's a good place to end.
Mm-hmm. How long was it?
Solid. We're 1:10.
Okay.
So yeah, like always, comment for a movie or something that you would want us to deal with.
Like,
or
subscribe,
review.
hit that bell notification.
Like, subscribe, hit that bell knob, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Damn that shit!
What's this thing? I've had it half on this side.
You're out your cash, you're out today.
Hey, you had like,